Listen up.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, MMS-MOA Special Edition. And I am joined by none other than Sven De Groote from Belgium, here in Minneapolis, Minnesota today. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, it's been a fun week, man. We've been chatting throughout the week. I'm glad we got to touch base and get a podcast in. One point of passion for you, I've found out, very obviously from your hat, but you are a big fan of the PSAppDeployToolkit.
Yeah, I broke into a lot of sessions, asking questions, guiding, answering questions sometimes.
Yeah. So at a high level, what is the PSAppDeployToolkit?
A PowerShell framework.
Yeah,
that rules them all.
It's essentially it's a bunch of commands you can use, and you have PowerShell that you put the commands in, and it helps you with doing different things for deploying your applications. Simple.
The PowerShell guys remove item. We do remove registry. It's a function that's in the 17,000 lines of the main.
Yes.
So that's 70,600 something lines of code, existing functions already there.
So you don't have to write them yourself.
No.
Right? These tasks that you're going to run into have already been written for you. There's a big community behind them, a ton of commands, a ton of work put in.
Yes, already done.
Yeah.
And if I remove a registry key, it's automatically logged. You don't have to rewrite the code that's already written.
Yep.
And also specific packager stuff is in there, getting active setups out of there, getting scheduled tasks out of there. It's already all in the framework.
That is sweet. So where does your passion for it come? I know you use it for your day job very regularly, but now you've sort of taken a chance, and I want to highlight a new project you've started working on.
Yeah.
PSADT.training.
Yes, that's the website. Type it without an S because I didn't get around of inserting a certificate in the website. So then you will end up at my YouTube channel, which contains one video.
As of now, who knows?
As of now. Maybe after this.
Maybe after tonight.
You asked me how I got into this.
Yeah.
I'm a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
And life is not a pony show. So now I've been packaging for 15 or 16 years.
Oh, wow.
Fresh out of school. I can do other stuff. Can do some SCCM, can do some Intune, but I've been packaging all my life.
So I guess by proxy, you're a PowerSheller.
Yeah.
I mean, we said that PSADT is just PowerShell scripts.
It's only PowerShell.
So you are a PowerSheller. So you didn't have any coding experience prior to that?
No.
So you learned what you know about PowerShell just through PSADT?
That's correct.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Going through that, were there any concepts you had to learn that were a little challenging that are unique to PowerShell?
But little secret, I saw the Jason over initial movies. That was my initial step into PowerShell. And then I circle through, I'm an independent consultant. I circle through my clients every 1.5, 2 years. I got a new client because I've automated, put down naming conventions where there are none and stuff like that. Standard packaging stuff.
Yeah.
And so the environment has grown up. Somebody else, internal, takes over. That's why the PSADT.training comes from. I've trained a number of help desk persons that now are able to do their packaging work because the PSADT, the PowerShell Application Toolkit, exists.
Yeah. And it's really cool because it's vendor non-specific. You can use it with whatever deployment method you have. So where I work, we have some deployment tools, and I'm looking forward to taking some of the parts of PSADT and being able to deploy PSADT stuff. And I love the freaking check to see if PowerPoint is running. And if don't do this now.
Oh, yeah.
That is
any
very
presentation,
smart, easy
any
winner.
presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're broadcasting on Teams, it stops you.
What other kind of helpers are similar to that? Any other cool little features? Reboots, pretty helpful. There's some awesome toast notifications.
I like the active setup that's in there.
Yeah.
I like being able to populate all user registries with a specific key.
Okay.
That's already in there. I like like I said before, scheduled task. That's already in there.
Perfect. So a lot of cool stuff. People should definitely check it out. If you haven't heard about it, it's one of those things. It's one of the projects. You can take advantage of other people's work and get some easy wins.
It's like MMS last year.
Yeah.
Me being me, I broke into a session of some MVPs, just stating that the zero config MSI installations was that little trick. You download the toolkit. It has a file folder. You drop an MSI in there, and it extracts all the details outside through PowerShell outside. So the vendor name, the application name, and the version. That's key for the logs. It extracts it out of there and it installs it automatically. So you just download the toolkit as a template, and then you put one file in it, and it automatically installs in it. Last year, that was not known. I broke into a session, said, stop. I have to say something. Go to line 137. Then it's there, the zero config. And the guy that was presenting, also a Belgian, thanked me. You always have to have a fellow Belgian in the room. That was Tim de Groote.
That's awesome.
Now that's at line 195, 198, because in the main, in the toolkit.
Okay.
So not in the main. This zero config, now I see in the room, I feel it. It's more known. So the development of the community, knowing what the power of that toolkit is growing. You see it also at other vendors that are here as a sponsor track. PDQ is also here, but Flexera leveraged the PowerShell application deployment toolkit into their products already.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's really cool to see initially a community-led effort. Now it has great support. It's open source. You got over 10 years of work being put into it. Do you want to put 10 years of work into something, or do you want to just start using it now?
It's actually 13, 14.
Over 10, okay.
Over 10, yeah, it's 13, 14.
Wow, that's pretty long period of time.
Basically, all my career that I'm looking at it, and now the last 7 to 8 year clients are beginning to adopt it. Before that, all VB script, and we don't like that.
I think it's really cool, though, that you've taken your perspective and things you've learned for your job, and now you're sort of paying it forward to the community at large.
Yeah,
that's what we love to see here, and the types of journeys that we love to celebrate and encourage other people to. If whatever it is in your little space of IT, find your way to get involved, to take advantage of the lessons you learned and get out there.
Like Chris Thomas said, be the master.
Be the master.
Be the master.
And you didn't even listen. I had an interview with him earlier, which will play before this one in the podcast, and we talked about a lot of that. Be the master was a big part of it. Awesome, man. Well, Sven, it's been a fantastic week here, but I have a question for you. What is one non-tech thing that you've learned this week?
Good question.
Yeah. I didn't tell you I was going to ask this one, did I?
Oh, no. Since I love to teach, the dot training is there. How to become an MCT.
Okay, interesting. Microsoft certified trainer.
Yes. I want to go that direction.
That's cool. And you're getting practice
to lift
and exposure.
And shift myself from packaging to go out and training. Some MVPs, they're very accessible here. I got some lunches, and there, just one of them whipped out the phone, scrolled down, said, this, you can do this, and this is your entry level. You can do that next to your packaging, day-to-day consulting job, and then get into the MCT space and take it from there.
Yeah. Sounds like we caught you at a good point in your journey. I'm buying now. The stock's going up, though. I can tell, man. You got passion just like I do, and you're happy to share with others.
That's why we've
been vibing all week, man. It's been so much fun. If people want to find you, we got PSADT.training. They can find your YouTube channel. If they want to connect with you, your name's Sven De Groote, but where should we find you on the internet? What's the best way?
LinkedIn. I will start a Twitter as well. Normally, the plan was to do only shorts of 60 seconds, but the first video turned out 3 minutes.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Okay.
I try and do short PowerShell videos, and it's hard. You got to cram it in there.
Yeah. That's maybe tonight I will do one under 60 seconds, and they will be at LinkedIn. So
okay.
listeners, just add me.
Yeah.
Add me on LinkedIn. I'll accept anybody.
Awesome. Well, when you do that, hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll share it out there. So
or shoot me an email, Sven@PSADT.training.
That
no
is simple.
.com, no .net after it. .training is the end.
Straight to your inbox, man. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone out there, for listening. Thank you, Sven, for joining us and for being an awesome person. It's been an awesome week.
Likewise, Andrew.
Yes,
Likewise.
sir. I'm sure I'll see you around at least next year here, but it's a small world. You never know.
Yes.
Awesome. Cheers,
Bye-bye.
man. I am joined with none other than Chris Thomas. We're currently here at MMS-MOA. I just got out of watching your talk with Dan Cunningham. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing all right. This has been a really fun week for me.
I can imagine. I'm catching you at a good time. We're right off the high of giving a great performance, a lot of audience engagement, a lot of questions afterwards, a lot of people using PSADT, which is what you talked about. A lot of just awesome engagement. Really cool to see. I want to cover your background in PowerShell, your journey to where you are now as a person who's giving talks, who's empowering others, who has a really healthy growth mindset. I want to cover some basics of PowerShell because you covered some good stuff in your session today where we learned about, well, we'll tease this later, but get CHM, which is a nice little command abbreviation that we'll expand on later, and more. But to get started, let's talk about this week. So we're here at MMS-MOA. I know you've given a lot of talks. So what talks have you given this week?
This week I talked on an app packaging deep dive with Rudy Bankson, and then did community tools with Jorgen Nielsen, and PSADT with Dan Cunningham.
Dan, he's awesome.
Yeah. And Jorgen. I looked back at some of my old slides because I also present and talk within the state of Michigan. I'm a member and the board president of the Michigan System Center user group, and I take part in a group called MAIDS, the Michigan Association of Educational Data Systems, and that's just a bunch of K-12 nerds across the state of Michigan managing schools. And when I give those talks, I was looking back at some of my old slide decks, and I was referencing things from Kent Agerlund and Jorgen Nielsen and Dan Cunningham from 10 years ago.
Wow.
And then today I get to present alongside them on stage, which is really cool.
That is kind of like a big full circle moment.
It really is.
As I was looking at your slides,
someone said before it was a great origin story.
It really is. And it's so cool to, when you're part of the community, you see all these different people at different places, different success levels. And it's cool to see, you can see people in the beginning stages, their first talk. You can see people where they're actually starting to implement things at work and maybe start blogging. And then you get to the point where you've known these people for several years, you're all growing together. It's a great experience.
Yeah, it's a small world when you look at some of this stuff.
And speaking of small world, we actually have a connection through friend and podcast guest, Jim Tyler.
Jim Tyler, yep.
So is he part of that Michigan group you were talking about?
He's part of MAIDS. He left education for a while. He went to banking, as I understand it. And then he came back to education. And I wondered why he did that. And one of the comments he had made to me was that there's just a bigger community in education where you're looking to share, whereas the banks don't want to share with each other because you might lose customers or something. But with an education, we collaborate a lot, and he really liked that atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. There's so many different communities out there. Maybe it's just internally at work, but you should be striving to seek these opportunities to build upon the work of others, to contribute the work that you're doing. And when you can collaborate in that way, you get fantastic things like PSAppDeployToolkit.
Yeah.
Right. And like a lot of these other community projects, and even just sharing scripts and sharing, oh, hey, did you even know this command existed?
Yeah. And that's the one thing Jim had brought up on your session. We've done a soft launch of it, but we've not fully launched it. myscripts.org, MIScripts. The intention behind MyScripts is that we're going to be intaking scripts from our K-12 community. We're going to sanitize them and then publicize them so that others can take that and implement it within their own environments.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Love to see that. You also talked about, so we have a PowerShell origin story you sort of went into. Going deeper than that, we had your sort of experience with Don Jones and learning how to really embrace and appreciate your career. Can you take us back to where you sort of found PowerShell? I know it's been over 10 years, but where were you in your career?
In my career, I was still using batch files and VB script to a degree. But I had a project come along where my school district was purchasing like $1.5 million worth of iPads. And this was before Apple had any sort of device enrollment program or app vouchers or anything like that. They were still saying apps were disposable at that time. And part of the account claiming process, since there was no DEP and no Apple School Manager, was you got an email and you had to click the register button and register your Apple ID to go live. So I learned how to do something, and I cobbled together some PowerShell scripts where it would do some web scraping of a Outlook or Outlook mailbox. I parsed through that, pulled out the URL. I was using a module called WASP that could interact with keyboard and mouse strokes.
Yeah.
And I was automating registering that. So I just let the script run, and overnight we registered a couple thousand Apple IDs with no one having to touch any keyboards. So that was my first really proud moment.
Wow, that's exciting. And then eventually you found PowerShell.
Found PowerShell, yeah. The bigger thing that's done something for my career has been identity management.
Yeah.
So I wrote an identity management PowerShell scripts that take data from our HR system, data from our student information system, and we'll go through and create the students and disable the students based on their term dates, and same with the staff as well. And I'm doing that across 7 different school districts.
Sweet. Yeah, that's exciting. You're definitely in a spot where you can leverage tooling and your position as a respected technical person to empower others to increase what they're able to do in their environments.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with a lot of industries, but K-12 and education in general, there's struggles with budget. There could be struggles with all kinds of things, and being able to empower and work together, huge part of that.
Yeah. And part of what inspired me with that was I can't remember when, but at some point I had read a book by Don Jones called Be the Master.
Yes.
And the Be the Master, it really inspired me to do more for my community. It started embedding in me that I have an obligation to give back to the community that has given to me. So whether that's the K-12 community, the Michigan community, or now coming to this community, it's almost an obligation I feel that I have to give something back.
I completely agree. I feel that same way. And it is an obligation, but it's also such a gift. Like, it feels very good to help someone else in your same
I'm on
shoes.
a dopamine high right now.
As you should be. Like, I love about it. I preach about it on the podcast all the time, but when you do things the proper way, it's good from every angle. It's led to career growth for you. It has demonstrably helped others and those around you. And if you're helping coworkers, you're actually interacting and getting to see the benefits of the work you're putting into them. And because a lot of times when you do public stuff, you don't always see the impact or hear about what it's done.
Yeah.
I think Dan was talking about back in the day when they launched PSAppDeployToolkit, they just thought nobody would use it. And all of a sudden, thousands of people are using it, and it takes off. And you're like, okay, wow. Just this thing I kind of was doing and I put out there apparently took off. And you'd be surprised the things that people do publicly that end up being really helpful for people.
Absolutely. You never know until you try it.
For sure. I love that we have that shared experience. I think a lot of people who were growing up in PowerShell at that time, who were in the community, the DevOps movement happened. There's all this kind of, we should be communicating. We should be embracing this stuff.
Yeah.
We should growth mindset. It's okay to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
We're not going to point fingers and burn the house down.
You saw me in some of those sessions. I don't know everything, but I'll look into it, or I'll learn alongside someone else.
And when you're in a spot where you're the expert in the room, right? You're on stage, not you, but anyone who's on stage, that's the expert in the room. When they demonstrate asking questions and showing vulnerability and showing not weaknesses, but just truth, right? Like, you can't know everything. When you do that on a stage, though, you open the door up for people who look up to you to feel like, wow, if so-and-so's doing it and they're speaking at this conference, and I guess I could do it.
And that's part of the reason I usually open most of my talks that I give with a brief little, what is imposter syndrome, how imposter syndrome has impacted me in my career, and how I've worked to get over that, and seeing others who are higher up than me. And also part of that is I used to compare myself to others. I would look at the Kents and the Jorgens and everyone else and be like, oh man, I'm not doing what they're doing, so I'm not doing enough. But I started getting in a mindset of, where was I and where am I? And as long as I've progressed from where I was, then I'm doing the right thing. I don't have to be at their level. I'm better than I was.
Completely agree. I relate to that a lot, because in the content space, I do a podcast. I could compare myself to many podcasts, and it's not even close to a drop in the bucket. But if I compare myself to before, it's like, oh, I'm actually connecting with people and helping them. I don't need to make those comparisons. This is way more than I thought I was doing 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. This is fantastic. And I can keep growing and building, but you got to embrace where you are and embrace the journey and take ownership. Like, a lot of the Be the Master stuff, man. It was so cool in that, like, for me in my life as a person, that book was so impactful to changing my approach to my career. And it's led to so much happiness and fulfillment, to the best way that I could describe it.
Yeah.
So, when was your first year coming to MMS-MOA?
2017.
Wow. What led to that? Did you hear about it?
Yeah, I had heard about it from the MyScug user group. At that time, I was just an attendee and a member of MyScug, and people had been talking about it. So I went to my management and explained how I could probably bring back value. That first time I went out, I took as many notes as I could, and then I basically came back, and my 8 or 9 technicians, I gave them the spiel of like a mini MMS share out for them at one of my monthly meetings.
Nice. And then you've been coming here ever since. There's such a good community here of people just like you who have been coming here for a long time and keep coming back and keep growing those connections that they have with people and get to the point where they're speaking. When was your first time speaking here?
This year.
Whoa.
I attended 2017. I attended 2019. I was supposed to present in 2020, but COVID took that away from me. And I offered to present in 20. I went into a bit of a depression after COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like disconnected from many of my communities. But then I got back to myself. I got some therapy. And in 2023, I submitted a proposal and got denied. And that hurt a little bit after I had previously been accepted. But then kept my head up and applied again for 2024. And here I am.
That's how it goes, man. Sometimes things work out the way you think they're going to. Sometimes they don't. And it works out for the best.
Yep.
And here you are now. I did not know it was your first time speaking. Based on the skills you had, I can definitely tell you have some presentation experience. I know you mentioned the user groups and stuff.
Yeah, user groups back home. I spoke at those, but nothing at this caliber. And with the amount of brains that are around you, there's so many smart people here. So it's a bit intimidating.
Yes, it definitely is. But you did a great job
Thank you.
at connecting with the audience too, right? Especially the way you introduce things by leading with some of the imposter syndrome stuff and reflecting back on your earlier times, very insightful and sort of opens people up to feel connected, to then have somewhat of trust in you for the other things you're going to say. But you had something that you mentioned. So you covered a bit of a primer on PowerShell, covered some helpful stuff. One thing that stuck out to me was get CHM.
Yeah.
So what is get CHM? I know I've talked about these commands before, but when they're packaged up like that.
And I've seen Jordan Benzing did a blog about it too with the same thing. And so when I see other people like doing the same thing I was doing, it's like, sweet, I'm on the right track. But CHM for me was, I was the nerd back in high school who would open up the compiled HTML help files with the tree branching I could read about it because I wanted to learn how the program worked.
Yeah.
So CHM is just stuck in my head as that's the help file. So I use that as a way of reminding myself and others to do get command, get help, get member, and get module. With those 4 commandlets, you can teach yourself everything in PowerShell without ever having to leave the shell and go to Google.
You can. And AI is awesome, and people are using it to help supplement their PowerShell and to learn PowerShell in some ways. But you need that core competency. You need the get CHM. You need to be able to query the actual commands that are on your computer that you're about to run. Because there can be disconnects, there can be new versions, things can get kind of
and like
confusing.
I talked about, not all commandlets take pipeline input. How do you know that? You either wait for the error messages or you read the help file.
Exactly. Yeah, there's been a lot of takeaways this week. I've had my, I thought I knew PowerShell pretty well. I found out that whenever you put commandlet binding on a function, I know it made it an advanced function, but apparently they consider it's essentially a commandlet written in PowerShell. I was under the impression forever that commandlets were just compiled PowerShell written in C#. But I know that you get a lot of functionality from adding commandlet binding.
But unless you're a true developer, you can't write a commandlet.
Right.
But apparently we can.
Apparently I've been doing it this whole time. I just didn't
You're a developer and you didn't even know
it. That's right. Yeah, I mean, if you're writing code that is production, there is something to be said. You are somewhat of a developer. You should take care of your scripts and use version control if you can.
And like Jeff Hicks says, do full commandlet naming and use your full parameter names.
Yes, I hear that, and it makes me reflect back to my conversation with Snover, where he took a hot take of he likes aliases. He thinks that is not the best advice. I fall in the middle where I think that for select object and where object, using select and where is okay.
Yeah.
But pretty much every other command, and even when those are published, you should just take advantage of the VS Code format on save.
For sure, but to a degree, sometimes that can get you in trouble because for each is not the same as for each object.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to get wholly different performance out of those two.
You definitely will.
So it's not truly, people might think it's an alias, but it's not really an alias or for each object.
Yes. That is true. And there's a lot of kind of confusion that can happen with some of that stuff.
Yeah. So that's why I like full naming, because then there's no ambiguity about it.
Yep. And I'll give a shout out to help about _flow_control. there's some good stuff there that I think when you get into the scripting side of things, you're going to need to know how to control the flow of your script.
And if you want your scripts to look nice, learn about splatting as well.
Oh, splatting is a great tip.
Yeah.
Splatting is a fantastic tip. Yeah, it's a great way to, if you have a bunch of parameters or even just a few parameters, you are able to list them one after the other, separate lines. It's very readable. Also, because it's kept in a hash table, you can programmatically create or decide or add parameters. Say you have 2 default parameters you want on all the commands, but in your script, you can add extra parameters to that hash table. Anyways, fancy stuff.
Yep.
Just like most things in PowerShell, it's very helpful on the low end, but also on the high end, if you invest in it, you can get a lot more out of it.
Yeah.
Like another thing I saw in your presentation was you had some quotes, man. You had some Snover and Don Jones quotes. You did some research.
I've been a follower for a long time. Yeah. When I get interested in something, I do deep dives for a while, and then I get bored of it and go find something else.
That is
a little
exactly
bit of the ADHD brain.
That is exactly me. I have a lot of hobbies that I'm good at, not amazing at, and just rotate through every few years.
I'm a jack of all trades type person. I like to read people, and when I find someone interesting, I tend to go down their rabbit hole for a while. And I've been down the Snover rabbit hole. I've been down the Don Jones rabbit hole, the Jeff Hicks rabbit hole, the Jordan Benzing rabbit hole, everything.
Yeah. And it's cool because when you, at least for me, it's like trying to understand the perspective of others. Not that you can get all the exact same experiences, but when you understand where someone who is having success is coming from and sort of how they think about things, you can take a lot away with it. I'll also say as the jack of all trades, master of none type thing, you do sort of become a master at learning new things in a certain way. And also by seeing so many different areas and patterns in these different hobbies, you learn a lot of things that are common in everything.
And you can start to see the bigger picture instead of just the one thing that's in front of you too.
Yes. For me, it's helped me really appreciate the benefit of having diverse teams. I talked to someone earlier who was like an art major, someone who taught English in college. Earlier in my career, I would have the mindset of, oh, no, we just need like the nerdiest of nerds, been using computers forever.
And I'm the guy who didn't do anything. I don't have any college degree. I don't have any certifications.
Right. No certs either.
No. So that lends the imposter syndrome even more for me, right? Because I don't compare to these people. But yet here I am.
That. Yes. I've been fortunate that there's a lot more language around, and I've seen success stories in tech for a while of people with no degrees. And if you have the skills and can prove it, which is the hard part where a degree sometimes helps, is if you aren't great at selling yourself or don't have anything that you can kind of point to, like, hey, I've actually am trustworthy. But yeah, similar background.
But if you put yourself out there, if you start a GitHub repo, put some of your examples out, if you blog here and there, if you're active on Twitter or Discord, shout out to the WinAdmins Discord.
Shout out.
I think if you put yourself out there a bit more, you start to feel more comfortable with those things.
Completely. And I'll highlight a story in a friend, Clayton Tiger, longtime podcast listener. I talk about a lot of the things you just mentioned on the podcast, and he started doing them. He went from doing nothing publicly. He started tweeting. He started blogging. Eventually, he found a problem. He solved it with a module. He published it. He blogged about it. Other people contributed to it. And in the end, guess what? He became a Microsoft MVP from this process. So it is a tried and true formula. You don't need to be in Microsoft MVP for you to consider it a success. It's just growth.
Right. You don't have to chase the MVP. You can just do it to do it.
And you learn along the way.
And sometimes to a degree, I've seen some people who are just doing it just to do their own self-documentation, and then it benefits someone else on top of that.
Exactly, man. If you're doing the right thing, it's the right thing from almost every single angle. And that, it falls right in there. So I highly encourage anyone out there, I know you've thought about a blog, and I know you've been a little scared, but it might be time to go through with that. It's not as scary as you think. There's other people going through the same process of feeling scared, like they might be called out as a fraud, when in reality, we're all just people. We all make mistakes.
To that point, too, I'll shout out Adam Gross in the Sysman Squad group.
Yeah.
There are places out there where if you don't want to set up your own blog and get your own audience, you could be a guest blogger on their thing, take advantage of the views you can get from them, and previous bloggers will lean in and help you write your article.
Completely. And I cannot overstate how helpful it is to not do all this on your own. To have somebody
We're stronger
in your corner.
together.
We are stronger together. And maybe I'll ask your perspective. If someone reaches out to you, is that something you think if it's a burden? Is it an opportunity you're excited for? What is it when someone reaches out and say, hey, could you help me with something?
If someone reaches out to me, it's flattering and I want to help them. Like I said, I feel that and obligation can have a negative connotation to it to a degree, but I see obligation as something positive. It's something that I owe to them, and it's not really a burden to me.
And they're providing you an opportunity to solidify what you've done already, to sort of make the work you've already done, the lessons you've learned, that the hours alone at the keyboard trying to figure things out, to put it to better use. Instead of just keeping all that struggle to yourself and, you know, feeling the success from it just to you, you can share that with someone else and make it more efficient. We like PowerShell, we like efficiency. Well, it's really efficient to make the most out of your work. Yep. And by sharing with others, you have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I've had, just for me personally, a lot of success. If you're into this stuff and you give honest messages or reach out for support or whatever it is, you'll have good success, especially in the PowerShell world, especially in some of these communities out there in the sysadmin space. But you got to try.
Yep.
And feel free. Reach out to Chris Thomas, reach out to I. If there's someone who you relate to and resonate with, or you're using their projects, or something they said really stuck with you, reach out.
Yep.
To me, that's what I say is like the first thing to do if you want to start getting out there. The easiest way to start is just say thanks for the things you're already using. Just reach out. Just put a like if that's your first step. You know, we want to build up to maybe start tweeting or blogging, whatever it is. But yeah, you got to find those opportunities and take those chances to put yourself out there.
Absolutely.
And it's nice that, you know, a lot of us are introverted a lot of times.
Absolutely.
So a lot of struggles many of us share with going through doing things publicly. But it's a shared experience. You're not the only one who's feeling like maybe you're doubting your skills and your successes.
People come up to me and say, "Oh man, you did a great job in that presentation." Meanwhile, I'm sweating through my shirts, just completely nervous, wondering if I did enough for everyone.
Dude, you did good. And I'll say, man, you had the chain out. You were looking on point, man. It was looking good. And you were in your zone too. You and Dan, did you practice that a lot? Because you bounced off each other really well.
No, Dan wanted to practice it a lot more, but our timing just didn't line up as well as it could have.
It worked out perfectly.
That's what I told him. I told him to be fine.
Yeah, you have passion for it and experience, and it's going to deliver value to the audience pretty easily.
Yeah.
So a lot of opportunity to, I guess, empower people, teach them some cool stuff.
Yep.
So back to the PowerShell days. What is one PowerShell module you recommend people check out?
Get help. Understanding how to read get help and understanding the syntax by which they show you the get help on those things so that you know what square brackets and parentheses and all that mean about what's required, what's optional, and whatnot, because it just looks confusing to most people.
Yeah, it really does. And there's a lot of things for me. As soon as I'm trying to learn something new and I encounter something that's additionally confusing or another subtopic you have to learn before you get into it, those hurdles can throw
a little bit of
off.
yak shaving going on.
That is exactly what it is. It is completely yak shaving. So PSADT. I'm going to talk to Dan about it some more, but what's a brief overview? What does this thing do?
Consistent deployments with a consistent experience, both for the user and the sysadmin, with user interactions with pre-built GUIs. It's just a great way to standardize your process.
A lot of helpful things that if you are in the business of distributing packages, you're going to run into some of these things. Prompting for reboot, right? Yep. That's very common. Prompting for user input is now a good time.
Closing an application that'll interfere with the installation.
Checking if PowerPoint is running.
Yeah.
These things are already built in. Like you're saying, we're building on a community tool. This is an open source thing. Very cool. You don't have to rewrite all these commands.
Nope.
You've probably manually done some of this stuff already.
Yep.
But now you have a more consistent way to build upon it. You don't need to write all the code yourself.
Nope.
You can take advantage. If you have a problem, you can open up an issue and you can help everyone.
There's a community, whether or not the developers help you. And now it's stewarded by Patch My PC. So there's going to be some corporate support probably at some point, but there's a community around it. So you could jump in the WinAdmins Discord. There's an app packagers channel, and you could ask your questions there as well.
Very cool. I'm excited to share this with some of the customers because we have a couple tools that deploy packages, and having a way to wrap it up and get some of these extra helpers in there.
And to that point, shout out to Master Packager, Master Wrapper. If you use Master Wrapper, it gives you a GUI for PSADT so that folks who are too scared of the PowerShell can just use this GUI and it'll spit a PSADT script out for you.
That is sweet. Check it out.
Yep.
Check out the GitHub. Is there a good landing page people should go to?
Masterpackager.com for that one.
Awesome. Masterpackager.com. Sweet. Well, Chris, it's been awesome to chat with you. I'm sure I'll see you next year at the very least. That'd be awesome.
We'll see. Next year's my 20th anniversary.
Right.
I'm missing my anniversary today with my wife.
Let's give your wife a shout out.
Yeah, happy anniversary, Tina. I love you.
Yes, Tina. In that photo, if you look in the photo, because what you did during your session before it started, you took a photo for your wife with the audience. We all waved. I'm one of those hands, so that's me waving at you. Hi.
She was already embarrassed because she saw the Google photo share come through, and I told her that the hands were up for her, that I had called her out. So
dude, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you have a great weekend, man. You earned it. You did a fantastic job this week.
Thank you.
Man, I'm just so happy for you. It's so cool. I didn't realize that all these things were kind of colliding at once for you. This is sort of a pretty cool career highlight. I'm sure you're going to keep going.
Absolutely. Before I came out here to get out-of-state travel approval, I had to go to cabinet and my superintendent and explain what it is and why I'm doing it. And within my proposal letter, I basically said, this is career goal type stuff. And yeah.
Hey, that works.
Yeah.
Especially when you have impact at work and are really amplifying your efforts. It's the easier case to be made.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Chris, people listen, they resonated with what you've said. Where can they find you on the World Wide Web?
Automate my stuff on X, formerly known as Twitter. Once in a while, I'm on the WinAdmins Discord. I'm mostly a lurker at this point.
Yep.
And that's pretty much me. There's a GitHub repo out there, Chris at Automate My Stuff. And I have some presentations and presentation examples as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining it. I think you're done talking for the day. Now that we're officially done recording.
Now I'm done.
And I'm sorry I put you under that pressure. You just finished recording. I walk up to you. Hey, you ready to do a podcast?
No, I appreciate it.
Hey, it was great to share this experience with you, man. Glad we could meet.
Absolutely.
Small world.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone out there for listening. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. We are everywhere. If you want to join the inner circle, talk some more PowerShell, join our little group of people who are coming up together, check out the PDQ Discord, PowerShell scripting channel, discord.gg/PDQ. Thank you so much for listening. Have a safe drive and a fantastic week.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.